Well, folks, in today's video, we're going to be figuring out a new way to connect this freight yard to the rest of my layout. Now, several months ago, I did a video where we built this line right here, and this connects up to the main line and eventually does go down to the freight yard. But it's a lot more complicated than it needs to be, and I think I've come up with something that's going to be a lot more straightforward and prevent a lot of derailments. So I'll show you what I have planned. Now, months ago when I built this section of track, a lot of people said that this right here was going to be a problem, this S-curve. And I can say for the most part they were right. There were definitely a lot of derailments which could have been avoided had I not built that section of track. I mean, it worked okay, but frankly it's just a lot more complicated than it needs to be. So what I've planned now is to actually move that switch all the way up here, and we'll run a bridge over here and connect the line up through this piece of track here. And I think that that's just going to be a lot more straightforward. There's going to be far less in the way of derailments, and larger trains should be able to fit down into the yard, which will be good as well. So that's the plan for today. Now let's put it into action. So I think to start off, we'll fix up this curve here. Alright, so we got that curve all rebuilt, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. I mean, it's really probably how it should have stayed in the first place, but you live and learn. And now the goal is going to be installing that switch over there. So I went and just put together this folding table right here, and this, just out of luck, is a very similar height to the layout. And I figure it can hold the bridge and everything else while we set it up, just so we can get a better idea of where all the stuff's going to go. Now, before I go splicing this trackage into the freight yard, I'm going to have to turn these switches here around because they're currently facing the wrong way, because again, I originally had the track going up here. So we'll just quickly do that, and then we'll be able to tie all of this in. Alright, so as far as I'm concerned, all of this track right here is complete. We got all of this soldered right here, so that's all looking pretty good. The last thing we have to do now is just install this switch right here, and then just start to build up all the terrain around it. And I've already gone ahead and crafted up this piece of styrofoam right here, which should fit quite nicely under here and support the bridge and everything else. So hopefully with the proper support, I think that this might work pretty well. We'll have to see, but I'm very happy with how it's coming along so far. So with a little bit of negotiation, I managed to get that switch in. I also soldered up all the connections with the rails there, so I think that those are looking decent. I glued this piece right here on, so that's looking pretty good in my opinion. Added a wood beam onto that table there just to make it a little more secure. So now the goal is going to be connecting this block of wood to the table and then getting the roadbed all laid out, and then we can actually test this thing. Well, with the roadbed all installed, I think we can call this section of track complete. I did end up having to shim this part up with a little bit of styrofoam because for whatever reason this block of wood wasn't cut quite right. I did it with a jigsaw, so it should have been straight, but for some reason it's tilted out a little bit, so I had to do that just to level it all out. But I think at this point we can test it all out and see if it works. I've got a few different locomotives which I want to try on it. The first one being this clapped out Athearn locomotive. This is usually what I use to test track just because this is one of the few locomotives which, you know, if it fell off the table, I'm pretty sure I could just piece it all back together. So it makes a perfect engine for testing track. I only paid $5 for it too, so that's good. So we'll test out the curve to start off. Yeah, that seems pretty good. Well, that's kind of ironic. I swear of all the things I would have expected to derail this locomotive, this curve would not have been one of them, but anyways, let's get it going here. Well, it seems good so far. Let's try it in the other direction. Very nice. We'll just test it out this time going up into the yard. That seems very acceptable. And it works the other way too. Fantastic. That's amazing. Not a single problem on the first try. Now it's time to test this out with some slightly larger locomotives. So here we've got a DD40 or a DD35. The debate, as far as I'm concerned, continues on that. But in any case, let's see how it performs. That seems good. Yeah, it seems to be able to get outside just fine. That part's no problems. Now let's see for backing up. Remarkable, absolutely no problems. Now, we passed that test, but the real one is right here. I'm going to be quite surprised if this locomotive doesn't have any problems on that new section of track, just because frankly, it already has issues on certain levels of normal track, so since there were a lot of bends and stuff, and it's not perfectly even, I think there is going to be an issue, but we'll see here. For anybody who's wondering too, I bought this locomotive off eBay in a recent video, and it looked to be in horrible shape, but I did a couple small repairs on it, and it seems to be running okay. But in any case, let's see if it can handle this section of the layout. I don't think it's derailed. Yeah, not too bad. Let's see here, will it come back? Okay, so there's a bit of a problem. I guess the locomotive can head inside the yard just fine, but the bridge is a little too narrow for this corner, so that's going to be a problem. So I guess it's going to need some modification before a big boy can run back and forth through there, but what I really want to see now is whether or not this can handle a train, which is obviously what it's meant to do. So this is going to be an interesting test here. Alright, that seems okay so far. Let's try the other one. I suspect we might have a problem just because a couple of these cars are kind of finicky. All right. Okay, there we go. We've had one derailment, but overall, that's very impressive. You know, the two grain hoppers are both very finicky cars, and we were able to run this train backwards and forwards through the yard, and it seems to be mostly okay. So I'm absolutely thrilled. I think that was a great success. So anyways, I think that's going to be about it for today's video. Obviously, there is quite a bit of work to be done. There is some small things that I have to iron out with this. We have to add detail. We have to hook up that section of track, and there's probably a whole bunch of other stuff I've missed. But for the most part, I think that this is a nice addition to the layout, and I am pleased so far with how it's turned out. And I think with a little more work, it might become something really terrific. So anyways, I want to thank you all so much for watching, and with that, I will call it a wrap. One last thing that I forgot to mention is that with all the space which has been freed up, there's actually area to build a new building, and I have something in mind. I think I want to add a shopping center to the layout, which is going to be loosely based on the Forest Fair Mall in Cincinnati, Ohio. I don't know if any of you out there know anything about that, but it's a pretty interesting place, which is unfortunately closing. But I'm not going to do anything for this project until I get Hershey's out of the way, and it is like 90-something% done. It really just needs the finishing touches, but that definitely deserves my attention first. But for the future, maybe 2023, stay tuned for this.